It is day 38, the longest government shutdown in American history. On the Senate floor, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer laid out a new Democratic counterproposal for ending the government shutdown. Check this out.
We'd like to offer a simple proposal that would reopen the government and extend the ACA premium tax credits simultaneously, and then have the opportunity to start negotiating longer-term solutions to health care costs. Let's do all three. I've spoken with my caucus, and Democrats are offering a very simple compromise. Democrats are ready to clear the way to quickly pass a government funding bill that includes health care affordability. Leader Thune just needs to add a clean one-year extension of the ACA tax credits to the CR so that we can immediately address rising health care costs. That's not a negotiation. It's an extension of current law, something we do all the time around here, as we all know. But we also offer this. Let's create a bipartisan committee that will continue negotiations after the government reopens on reforms, ahead of next year's enrollment period, to provide long-term certainty that health care costs will be more affordable. This proposal reopens the government and ensures working families who are shopping right now for their health care get certainty and financial relief. While open enrollment has begun, insurers can update their rates after we pass a simple extension of the tax credits. With this approach, we do not negotiate health care in the shutdown, as Leader Thune has maintained he wishes, and the American people get the tax credit extension they want. That is what many of our Republican colleagues have floated over the last 6 weeks as a compromise, a one-year tax credit extension and reforms to the credit beyond that. We will agree with the Republican request not to start negotiations until after the government reopens. All Republicans have to do is say yes to extend current law for 1 year. It makes sense. And since what we're proposing is only a simple extension of current law, the Senate could do this within a few hours. This is a reasonable offer that reopens the government, deals with health care affordability, and begins a process of negotiating reforms to the ACA tax credits for the future. Now, the ball is in the Republicans' court. We need Republicans to just say yes.
Now, the proposal comes amid mounting pressure from unions and fellow Democrats who emphasize the urgency of resolving the shutdown. However, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson remains non-committal about voting to extend the subsidies, leaving uncertainty around any deal. Now, y'all want to hear some stupidity? So, Republican leader John Thune, this is what he said. He said something that was just so profoundly dumb to me that it's unbelievable. I can't believe he actually invoked Capitol Police. Listen to this.
Junior senator from Connecticut certainly believes in saying the quiet part out loud. This is what he said, and I quote, "I think there will be some pretty substantial damage done to a Democrat brand that has been rehabilitated if on the heels of an election in which the people told us to keep fighting, we immediately stop fighting." He said that on a podcast yesterday. He went on to say that the 2026 election is just 12 months away. And if we surrender without having gotten anything, and we cause a lot of folks in this country who had started to believe in the Democrat Party to retreat again, I worry that it will be hard to sort of get them back up off the mat in time for next fall's election cycle, end quote. Let me repeat that, Mr. President. This is what he said. I worry that it will be hard to sort of get them back up off the mat in time for next fall's election cycle, end quote. Now let that sink in for a minute, Mr. President. I don't think it's a secret to anybody that the Democrats shut down the government for political reasons. There's been plenty of news coverage of the incredible pressure that their far-left base has been exerting. But in case anyone was still under the impression that Democrats were driving this shutdown toward its 40th day out of concern for the American people, well, the junior Democrat from Connecticut pretty handily dispelled that notion. Again, that's what he said. I worry that it'll be hard to sort of get them back off the mat in time for next fall's election cycle, end quote. And just in case anyone needed any additional testimony, Axios reported on Wednesday, and I quote, a set of post-election talking points circulated.
All right, so here's what was interesting. Thune was complaining about and saying that how dare Democrats should come in here. They're being protected by Capitol Police, and these people can't pay their bills, and their kids are going out. You mean the same Capitol Police that y'all want to put a plaque up honoring them that was passed by law? Oh, both Capitol Police. Okay, I got you. Joining us right now, co-convening the Repairs of the Breach Poor People's Campaign, Bishop William Barber. Bishop Barber, you heard Schumer talk about this compromise. What should we be doing? Do we accept this, or we could keep the pressure on?
First of all, that word compromise just bothers me so much with Democrats. Even when you have a pure, straightforward moral issues, you told people that you were going to fight to get the health care and to protect health care. Now you're talking about compromise. Why would you compromise on the Affordable Care Act? It's already a compromise. Most people wanted universal health care. Most people want what every senator and every congressperson gets when they get elected to Congress. Every time they talk about compromise, it looks weak. It is weak. People are fired up. People are standing. Why would you? Even Murphy, who's a senator out of Connecticut, was saying, why would you stop fighting now? And then, Roland, why would you trust them with an open government? Because you know, like I know, as soon as they get back, they're going to lie and change and not do what they promised, find ways to get around it. I mean, this is who you're dealing with. You can't suddenly change them. They have to be beaten by people standing on their moral high ground. People are already hurting. In the South, for instance, there are only 2 or 3 states in the South that have even expanded healthcare, that even bought into the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid expansion. And so why stop now? At the very moment that people are standing up, why did the Democrats always have to come to the table with the compromise instead of letting the Republicans come and just stand on your point? Our point is leave the Affordable Care Act alone. Don't try to desubsidize it, and we can open the government back up. Vote to do that. Vote to extend. It's clear. It's so clear that why would you mess it up by adding something else into the mix and talking about another compromise? And these so-called moderates, Dr. King said the greatest problem to the civil rights community were moderates who were more interested in order and looking good than dealing with problems. And they're going to, every time, get us in more and more trouble. And the people are really sick of this. Stand on your principles, man. That's what we need. And we need to be calling them, Roland. Everybody ought to be calling them. And don't let them say, well, people are hurting. People have been hurting. Even before all of this, 140 million people in poverty, 87 million people uninsured or underinsured, some million people without a living wage. Don't talk about people are hurting now. They've been hurting. And if that's the issue, then you should have been fighting a long time ago, for living wage. This is the same group, Roland, that when we could have had passed living wages, almost $16 an hour in 2021, Democrats, these moderates, joined the Republicans in the Senate and blocked living wages. It's the same group. They always end up leaning into their corporate sponsors or whoever they are and walking away from the people. And it's wrong, and we need to cry it out and say it and call in and push and push and push. Don't you give up now. Don't you turn back now. Don't do that, because that is actually the wrong place to be in this moment.
So on that particular point, again, so for the folks who are watching, the folks who are listening, the action that you want them to take, is you want them to call Chuck Schumer's office and say, take the compromise off the table, and specifically say what?
Specifically say, stay where you started. You said that your goal was to protect the Affordable Care Act. You said that you were against the big, ugly, deadly, destructive bill that would take 20-some million people's health care. You said that you were going to protect the extended, not for a, but you protect them, period. You were going to make it so that never would they touch that. And that needs to be your position. What's going to happen magically in a year? What is this group that's so-called going to get in compromise? Again, Roland, it's already a compromise. I want folks to hear that. The Affordable Care Act in itself is a compromise because it's not universal health care. So, one, stay where you started. Stay on the wall. Stay on there. Don't let them push you off. Stay in that point. Take your hands off health care. Don't touch the subsidies. Don't try to change it. None of that. And if they can agree, the Republicans, you want them to say yes to that rather than you saying, oh, here we are. We just want to fix it for a year. Just don't touch it for a year. And listen to this, Roland. If they do it a year, then this is what people need to hear. Let's just say they will agree to this. A year would put you 2 weeks after the elections in 2026. So now you've taken a political issue off the table. In other words, there are times that politicians need to pay for the consequences of their action. Don't take this issue off the table at the very moment that people are coming alive and standing strong and refusing to go along with their lives anymore. This is the wrong time to be talking about compromise. They should be talking about commitment.
So many different folk, to your point. We saw what happened election night. We saw folk coming out. We saw folk who were saying, hey, we want to see change. We saw red seats that were flipped as well. And this is not a moment to actually slow your momentum down. You got Donald Trump over there. He's freaking out so much, he's demanding Republicans get rid of the filibuster.
Yeah. Let me tell you something, Roland. We had mayor seats in North Carolina. And, I'm repairs non-politics. But we had mayor seats where we thought would go a certain direction, and the turnout changed them in North Carolina. All over the country, not just in New York. Mississippi broke the Republicans' veto-proof majority in Mississippi, of all places. And so again, 7 million people in the streets just a few weeks ago, no King's Day. Tomorrow Monday's picking up, clergy and impacted people. We were just in the Capitol last week meeting with Hakeem Jeffries, where impacted people, black and white and others, made just saying, hold on. Don't change. These are people who really are hurting, but they recognize they will hurt worse if we allow these extremist MAGA folk any room to further destroy health care. And if they get the government back open, that's what they're going to do. They're lying. You cannot trust them in a negotiation. When have they ever kept their word in a negotiation? The problem is they continue to deal, and the Senate always ends up doing it. They call themselves compromise. So they compromise on the Voting Rights Act. Guess what, Roland? We don't have a Voting Rights Act. They compromise in some ways on this big, ugly, deadly bill. What do we end up? We end up with a bill, 22 million people losing health care, 16 million people losing health care, 22 million people using SNAP. Compromise in a time that calls for courage is actually insane.
I saw this clip. I was coming in, and Mehdi Hassan was on the Breakfast Club, and Charlemagne the God said that that the Democrats, should vote to end the shutdown. And Mehdi said, why? He said Republicans are in control. They got the House, they got the Senate, they got the White House. He said, and Mehdi said the Republicans are acting like petulant children. And then I think Charlemagne said, well, that's why Democrats should do it. He's like, because Republicans are not going to do it. And then Mehdi said, why is it up to why do the Democrats have to always be the grown-ups? Why do they always have to be the ones that say the Republicans? He said that the Republicans get to say and do whatever they want because they know that Democrats are going to be the ones who are reasonable. So he said, hell no. He said, sit there and force them to say, it's your shutdown, you have the power, you end it.
Well, not only that, the government didn't shut down because Democrats just wanted to shut it down. It shut down because the Republicans were going to destroy the Affordable Care Act. Let's get that straight. That's why they shut it down, because they were going to destroy and the Democrats refused to go along with the demands of Trump, so they shut the government down. They shut it down because they would rather steal, take food from the poor and steal, rob health care from the sick. Let's be clear what this is about. Everybody needs to be clear. It's not just about that they have the power, they have the majority. Nobody wins a majority. When they win a majority, has the right to run roughshod over the Constitution, have a right to violate the Constitution. That's what they have done with their power. They have given more money. They have transferred more money from the poor and working people than was transferred from the slaves to the slave master. With their power, they passed a bill that will cost 51,000 people their lives, 51,000 people their lives in the first year because of what's being taken in health care. And Senator Murphy the other day reminded folks, he said, this is not about Democrat and Republican. This is about life and death. If they would have kept the government open and would have allowed them to do what they were going to do to undermine and destroy the Affordable Care Act, for every 500,000 people, Roland, that lose health care, something in the neighborhood of 2,800 to 3,000 people die. That's what this is about. And this is happening in a time when 800 people are already dying every day from poverty, from the policies that keep poverty alive in this country that doesn't have to exist. So I would say, even to my brothers, whoever they are, just get our facts straight. This is not a game. This is not about who has power and just letting them do what they want to do. This is about life and death. The Democrats had to make a stand. Otherwise, millions and millions of people would lose the very thing that every member of Congress gets when they get elected. And I wish more people would talk about that and say, listen, you got people in Congress, in the United States Senate, and in the House who before they get elected, they may not even have health care, or they've got just a little bit. As soon as they get elected, they get the best health care in the entire world. What kind of sickness is in your spirit that get that, and then once you get it, you don't want the people that elected you or the people from your state to have the same thing? Yeah, go ahead.
So Bishop Barber, so again, when we talk about what's going on, right? So the increase in premiums, these letters have started going out.
Yes, sir.
So some will say, well, that's already happened. So people are hurting. You've got folks not getting paychecks. You've got SNAP benefits being cut. So therefore, if you extend the government shutdown, then you're further hurting those people. And since they're going to raise premiums, there's really nothing you could do. So Democrats should capitulate. They should go ahead and say, well, we'll give in. Let's go ahead and reopen the government. Again, what do you say to those folks who might even say, well, wait a minute, Schumer's offering a 1-year compromise. Why not take that and reopen now and then fight 6-9 months down the road?
Well, first of all, let me just take the end. We ought to fight. Number two, you got to look at the history of who you're dealing with. Every time they get 1-year extensions, they come right back to the same thing. And I think we're arguing it from the wrong perspective. See, this is what I think Democrats should do first before they put anything on the table, or compromise and whatnot. Bring everybody you can to the Capitol that's going to be hurt by what they're doing and who are currently losing. They could do that. They could summon everybody from their district that are getting letters and let those folks speak. Let those people tell you what to do. I can tell you that the people we took last week, we didn't talk, Roland, for them. They talked for themselves. They said it's some pain now, but don't give these people the power to hurt us anymore. Yes, we're hurting, but hold the line. Put us on TV. put us in front of the American people. That's part of the reason that sometimes you end up having to offer compromise, because you continue to argue without the people. You know, like I know, when Republicans want to get something, the first thing they do is put a face on it. They put a face on it. And so rather than they had an insurrection, why not in this moment right now, headed toward Thanksgiving, why not Democrats take the time to mobilize thousands of people to come in the halls on Capitol, have a public hearing outside on the steps of the Capitol, and let people come up, the people that are like the young boy that got his letter the other day, he has cerebral palsy. You know, bring them up and let them talk. Let them say, not only do we not want you to compromise, we don't want to compromise coming out of this. We want you to take your damn hands off our health care. And if you're going to compromise from a position of strength, not from a position of, well, we're going to offer you a year and then we're going to bring a bipartisan group together. There's no bipartisanism in the Congress anymore. You got MAGA. You don't even have Republicans. You got MAGA and Democrats and shades of Democrats. They are following the lead of Donald Trump. He's already said what he wants. And I tell you, if they get back in, there is no reason, and there is no law that says, Roland, they have to keep that compromise once they open. So let me just say that to folks. Understand where we are. They could say, yes, we will compromise, so forth, and then turn right around once the government opens and renege on it. They've done it before, and they could very well do it again.
Questions from the panel. Candace, you first.
Well, you know, I firmly agree. I mean, what are you going to do with 1 year? Because in 1 year, you'll be back at the same position that you will again. You talk about gathering people together and bringing them down and making sure their voices are heard. What really is the best way to do that in terms of the time, in terms of how quickly one would want these subsidies to be put back in place? When we're talking about bringing people together, it takes a lot of organization, and I'm wondering what you would believe would be the first step in making sure that people's voices are heard in some way, on some level.
Well, first of all, they need to turn it into a campaign, and not a moral campaign, and not just merely a political campaign. And what do we do in campaigns? You can say, if Roland was running for president and he got a campaign, he could say, I'm going to Houston by Monday, and Monday they would have a stadium packed. Go find those folks. Go find those folks there and turn them loose on this. See, run it like a campaign. You know, they are running a campaign of meanness. We need to run a crusade of love and a crusade of justice, right? So there are people out here that know how to do this. You know, they know how to do it. They could mass mobilize in a moment and turn some of this money. You know, what do we spend $10 billion on the last election? Well, take the 500 million and get buses and everything and get people up here. This could be done, but you have to decide. And this is what I'm concerned about. I wonder sometimes, particularly after the election in New York and some other things we see, if there are Dems who don't really want to see a massive movement of the people. Because a massive movement of the people is not just going to change MAGA, it's going to change Dems.
Before I go to Matt, Bishop Barber, a federal appeals court is leaving in place a lower court decision that requires Donald Trump and his administration to swiftly provide full benefits to the 42 million people who are on SNAP. It was from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit that made it clear, because Trump appealed that lower court decision. They said, the appeals court said, no, you got to send him the money.
That's right. Got to send him the money. And if he doesn't, we're in constitutional crisis. And that's where we're really headed with this, because this business of him saying, well, I'm going to do partial, I'm going to do a little bit. And by the way, the people are hungry now. You know, my wife pastors, and she's getting call after call after call from all these agencies now, trying to find out where there's food, where there's what's going on. You know, again, you got these people, Roland, that know how to do mass organization. They've got mass money. set up, if you really want to be radical Democrats, set up a massive food bank right on the steps of the Capitol and have people come there and get their food and testify. I mean, this is the moment we got to do things that are different, that are radical, that put a face on this so that it's not just a left versus right argument, a Dem versus Republican, that we really, really expose that this is about life and death. And I want to keep emphasizing that to your panel. We passed a bill, the Congress passed a bill, even with that, the one that took food stamps and SNAP, and now the additional things that's happening with SNAP, that when that bill was signed, we signed the death certificates of 51,000 people. Just that has not been talked about enough. That has not been put out there enough. We keep running from that issue, and this is fundamentally a moral issue about life and death. And them should be figuring out, how do we take the same campaign energy when we're running for office and apply it to this moment. And you remember, Roland, back in the day when a president had a budget or something, they would get on the road.
Yep.
And they would start promoting it everywhere. Well, that needs to happen right now, but different than it being on the road, we ought to make the people in D.C. have to see the people they're hurting.
Yep, absolutely. Put a face on it. Matt.
So my question, Reverend Dr. Barber, is I agree with you completely. I'm just interested in your thought about how the Dems shape that messaging. I know you're talking about them doing it as a campaign and framing it morally, which makes perfect sense. But I think their fear is that if they let it languish too long, they're going to look like they played into the suffering of the people. I mean, I think you spoke to that. So how do they need to shape that messaging now so on the back end of this shutdown, it doesn't look like they played into that, callously?
Well, the people want to come and speak. That's one thing that I'm bringing to you from being around. We've been doing Moral Mondays in 10 southern states, and the folk that are coming to Iowa, they want to come to D.C. They want to speak. And actually, you are stronger if you had thousands of people to come and had around-the-clock testifying of those people and people listening. Then you could say we're responding to what the people want. But let the people say, because there are moments that people will say, I'm going to suffer anyway. Let me choose the suffering. Let me choose it. And the suffering I choose, is the one that's going to ensure that they don't do the ultimate damage. So I think there's a way of letting the people speak. But the problem is we haven't done that. Even when they were working on that, the big, bad, ugly, deadly bill, for too long, Dems allowed it to be just a political bill rather than a moral issue and bringing people in. I don't know, and I'll be first to say everything that will happen if we do this. But I know what's going to happen if we don't. What's going to happen if we don't is a few folk going to get in a room, do a compromise, and we're going to be right back in the same place. And we may be in a worse place because we're dealing with people who have no credibility, no conviction, and no commitment to the truth. They will lie to you to get what they want and then turn right around and do what they want. We've seen that.
Michael.
Reverend William Barber, we've seen Trump delay SNAP payments to put pressure on Democrats and their constituents. We've seen him rescind construction projects like for New York, New Jersey, the $18 billion tunnel to put economic pressure on Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Schumer. Do you think Democrats need to organize and their constituents to organize to put economic pressure on Republicans? And as Dr. King taught us, to redistribute the pain through targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies, maybe target the top 3 or 4 corporations to help finance these Republicans and Trump to put them in power. This is a perfect time of the year because we're going into the Christmas season. What are your thoughts on that? Has there been any talk of economic withdrawal strategies to put economic pressure on Republicans?
There is some conversation about that, recognizing that there has to be multiple strategies. One of the things you learn, even if you go back to the Montgomery movement, I don't want to go too far, people think it was just one thing. It was multiple strategies.
Yep.
It was economic, it was legal, and that does not change. Litigation, agitation, mobilization, voter participation, and economic power, economic protest as well. I think it needs to be, yes, it needs to be across the board. And I think that one of the things we need to look at was how we go into this season politically. Roland and I are getting ready to convene a group really soon to take a look at, what really, what number should we be looking at, even in terms of voting, to raise the number of African Americans and others that turn out, that could make some of this gerrymandering and become dummymandering. Because, for instance, in my state, what they're doing to the 1st Congressional District, and we're talking about both in that district, since they want to challenge it, we're talking about some economic boycott issues, but we're also talking about some massive voter mobilization, because they have drawn these maps based on a 45% turnout, which means if we do a 55% turnout, the maps get turned over. So I think my answer to your simple question is yes. We should be, the Dems or whoever and Margaret should be looking at every area. Now, the one thing you have to do, and as you said, I love what you said about targeted. Let's go back to something Bayard Rustin said. He said, if you're going to start a targeted economic pressure, you don't go everywhere and try to do it all over at the same time. You have to target. Right. Whether in a state or whether it be you can't just announce it, and you don't want to do that unless you're serious about it. And that's why, again, one of the things I think that could make people more serious about what you're saying is to first see the faces of the people. This thing is still too technical. It's still too technical, right? And we're trying, small groups are trying with the few dollars that we have and trying to mobilize and push out. But I contend that the powers that be, that claim they care for these folk, that have all of this money, are to move from a inside the beltway political strategy to a campaign strategy. And that campaign strategy ought to include multiple layers of pushback, even the economic piece.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Bishop William Barber, always a pleasure. We got to keep the pressure up.
Thank you now. Take care, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase, and I'm here with a very important message. We are at a turning point in the Black community where we must have equity in the apps we use that scale to billions of dollars. But this time, we own the infrastructure, we own the culture, and we shape the future. And Fanbase is the future. Fanbase combines the free functionality of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube into an all-in-one platform built for the evolution of social media and monetization. With over 1.4 million users, that's real proof that we are shifting the conversation of tech ownership and equity for creators. So right now, I want you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. This marks a turning point in Black ownership of social media. If we don't take this opportunity to own social media right now, we will always be customers to our own creations. And that can't go on. So once again, go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. We must own the platforms where our voices live, our stories matter, and where our culture drives the world. Thank you.